Can't Sit With Us podcast with your host, Mother Delamort, Akad Norman, and Hexus Diamond.
Hello. All right.
Hello, TV land.
Woo! All right. So, well, hello, Calvin. Hello.
I'm here.
So,
Calvin.
He was there the whole time.
So this is our podcast, guys.
Yes,
as you guys know.
I'm wearing a Dead Boy shirt and Xbox gaming jammy jams.
I am wearing a Sinister Point shirt.
I'm wearing I don't know, the Many Faces of Marvel shirt. I don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, and I have
it's clean, is what it is.
Star Wars.
And I am wearing bags large enough to go to Florida in.
Yeah. See, that's why I got a blue light on so you can't see them.
That's why I added red to make it look like it was a fashion statement.
There you go. I meant to do that.
I added red just to be like, oh, I look tired by, design.
Oh, my light's for a whole set up for a whole gag later on the show because yeah.
Huh?
you were in the bathroom getting ready, and Raz was showing us some stuff.
Oh boy, should I be scared?
Yes. This is the episode where if you're watching live, Raz is gonna whip his wiener out for everybody to see.
No. Okay, and then put up a thing where they can pay us to make me put it away. I bet you the network makes $1,000 in the first minute. Just no.
Then we just need a Slippy in here.
Boots and kicks.
Well, have you seen our? Speaking of that, have you seen our San Nana?
What?
Our what?
Our San Nana. Hold on, just a second. I'll get our daughter to get the San Nana. Can you hear me? The San Nana.
San Nana.
Yes. All right. So this is. I bought this for her. Okay, it's a banana.
Okay, listen. If you're paying attention to the chat earlier, that looks like that bendy sausage story. It's sausage.
I'm over here trying to share
That's
things.
a garbage nana.
Yeah, I was trying to share stuff too, but then I saw that and I was just like, nope. This is my reality now.
Oh, yeah. I am currently trying to share things out, guys.
I'm sitting there going, we're getting into a very deep subject here that revolves around something like that that happened.
Like a bendy sausage.
There was a bendy sausage that popped out. That actually really did happen in the story. And it's
how do we keep finding ourselves circling this drain,
Well, it's a drain that America has been circling since before we became a nation. I mean, you look at the Salem witch trials, everything. I mean, they came over here to escape religious persecution, but they immediately start persecuting everybody who's not their religion. And it's a part of history that keeps repeating itself almost every generation, roughly. It just hasn't happened this generation now. I mean, our generation it did with the with the Gen Xers and all this other stuff, which this is where this is coming from. And then this new generation, it hasn't repeated itself just yet, but I got a feeling it will. It will. People always head back to Lucifer and Satan being the gigantic scapegoat, and we're going to use that to go after people.
Well, and it really speaks to all through history the group hysteria.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
or mass hysteria.
Well, in part 55, right, Raz?
I can't believe you even said part 2 again, man.
Hey, Tony. Hey, Nadine, and hey, Jennifer. In
Nadine.
The next episode, which we're finally going to get to, the third episode.
Part 2.
I don't know which. This is getting confusing here.
The third episode of part 2 of the 14th show.
We're going to get back into something that Odd Mother here covered roughly 2 years ago, which was the West Memphis 3. Now, in that, do want to talk about false confessions, which is a big part of that. Real big part of that. And that's actually a major aspect of everything here, leading the witnesses and stuff like that. It's basically it's something that happens over and over again because basically people want to get back to their comfort spot because they're pulled into interrogation rooms. Sorry.
Well, do you think some of it too, honestly, was a springboard off the whole repressed memory thing that was so big during the 80s and 90s? Like everybody must have had a repressed memory.
We're gonna get into this. Before what were you gonna say, Nicole? Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna respond to some comments and then make mention that we're not really gonna get to much comments tonight per usual. We're going to set aside some time at some point and acknowledge the comments. So please don't get offended when we kind of just skim through them. Unless it's like super relevant to like what we're saying, we may bring it up. But in general, we're going to let them kind of group up, address them all, and then go back to what we were doing.
Here's a big thing, guys.
That being said, because this reminded me of Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell.
There's going to be a satanic play at Jefferson's Forest High School. This is all for you, Satan. That's a good episode.
Or Satin, the soft and silky one.
That reminds me
Satin.
It reminds me of this podcast called Welcome to Night Vale, where like it's just a radio DJ that talks about all these weird things that are like hanging out in town. And at one point in time, he's like,
I know what you're talking about.
Go to the dog park. You'll see hooded figures in the dog park. I repeat, do not go to the dog park.
Didn't you bring that up before?
Oh,
I think you. This was like I think
it's been around for years.
Ago.
This podcast has been around for years. It's on Spotify. It's everywhere. But dude, definitely, it's cool as shit.
I love podcasts like that. I love anything that is connected to coast to coast. If it's
Night Vale's nothing like that. It's like a story-based podcast that doesn't seem like it's a story-based podcast because it plays music and everything like a real radio station. But it is actually telling you a story without you realizing it. It's crazy.
It's the way you said it was. Don't go here because of the people.
Yes,
clothes
yes.
Stuff like that.
Very like old school, like kind of Art Bell voice, basically. Yeah.
If any radio show, I don't care. You could be blatantly ripping off coast to coast, and I will listen to you.
Me too. Oh my god.
Well, there's something about listening to those kind of radio channels late at night. You know, when the whole world's asleep. It's just, I don't know. It just makes you want to snuggle down, and I don't know. I find it comforting, even if it's scary.
I remember back when they created that one fan created the theme song for Coast to Coast, and they actually used it for like a while. It was a pretty amusing theme song.
Art Bell was such a good guy. When I found out he died, I actually didn't know he died until a couple years afterwards, because the whole thing was his wife couldn't become a citizen for some odd reason, so he just said, "Screw it, I'm going to produce," and move to the Philippines with her. Yep, and that's where we got George Norrie. But
it was, but they still satellited are in from time to time there for a bit.
Yeah, it was great.
Special episodes, yeah.
And I love George Norrie to death with Coast to Coast. Sorry, not to go off on that.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, if you do talk to Tex, we will bring your comments up left and right. I'm just kidding. So what I was getting into here, this trial is where it wasn't so much it was coercing children with the dolls. That's where that became famous. Show me on the doll where they touched you.
And that's how Chucky was born.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how.
And the topic, you know, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the McMartin preschool trial.
Yes. The Satanic Panic officially actually started here in my hometown. The first I forgot to get notes on them, but I already know what kind of basically happened. The first people who the first children who were coerced into basically tattling on their parents and stuff like that ended up getting their parents put in jail. One of them was a 20-year sentence for something he didn't do in any way, shape, or form, and then they came back later when the children were older, was like 12 or 15 years later, going, that actually didn't happen. We were coerced into it. And Another person here in Bakersfield served 20 years of their 40-year sentence before they were released. Yeah, this is insane when we talk about the Satanic Panic and what it did to people's lives. I mean, coming off what happened in the 70s with the pedo ring of the 70s and stuff like that, which actually, really legitimately happened, and cops across the nation, were finding them left and right. Going into the 80s, from stuff from people like Richard Ramirez to other serial killers that were coming out, people started getting real scared and immediately started blaming everything on the devil. And then you have people who wanted to build their careers on the backs of innocent people. And this is what we're going to get into with the McMartin preschool. So,
sorry, I pulled up a little bit of information on the Bakersfield Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
And the families that were involved. So
it literally happened the same year. It just happened a few months before, I think. It all kicked off.
Well, and I think you guys have a better perspective too, because I imagine you guys are going to have more detailed information as to how the story really went versus how it was received throughout the nation via newspaper and
well, not me. I was in Anaheim.
They pretty much. It literally took them. I want to say it was the late 90s by the time one of them got out. They were put in the early 80s, and that much is I do know for sure. The rest of it I really didn't know too much about, but it was very prevalent here. Like, I remember being a kid going to Buena schools like that. My elementary school. Kids being pulled out left and right, being questioned here and there. It was almost like a every couple week thing where a kid was pulled again aside from by a detective or something like that, and it was like it was legitimately scary.
Yeah,
to have stuff like that happening.
Keep this in mind. Out of the 29 that were convicted, 10 were given probation, or 39 that were convicted, 10 were given probation, 29 people went to prison. And of those 29 that went to prison, 23 of them had their convictions overturned. Of the remaining 6, 3 were released after serving their sentences, and 1 woman died in prison.
Bad of cancer is what it says.
Of cancer, yeah. And then 1 of them still remains in prison. So out of 39
even
people,
to this day,
yes, out of 39 people, only 1 of them was actually a pedo.
But it devastated all their lives, I'm sure.
No matter how innocent someone, no matter how much you prove your innocence here, after these allegations come forward, you cannot get rid of that stigma. Damien Eccles, to this day, absolutely to this day, cannot go back to West Memphis, nor would he want to. I would hope he wouldn't want to go back there, but there are legitimately West Memphis. Really, most of the people there believe he's a murderer, a satanic murderer who killed those kids, even though it's been proven left and right that it was some other person. They still didn't catch him, and they even proved that it was animals that basically mutilated the bodies.
Turtles,
snapping turtles mostly.
Hey, calm down now. I like turtles.
I like turtles.
I like turtles.
But yeah, he's still to this day.
Even so, one of the crazy parts about the Bakersfield Satanic Panic was exactly what you guys were saying earlier. The kids were coerced into testifying, even though they said that nobody was ever touched. Nobody touched me. This never happened. They were actually pressured by the police to say that they were molested when they were 6 to 8 years old.
They wouldn't let these kids go until they got the answer they wanted.
Exactly. So they later testified in court, even though they did not believe that any molestation happened.
One of the kids we'll get into it here in a second here, but one of the kids in the McMartin scandal came forward in the early 2000s and wrote an op-ed piece stating that he lied, that and it was how they did things with the dolls and stuff like that, and And you want to be a smart kid, don't you? You don't want to be one of the dumb ones who's over here. You have to. It basically saying answer how I want you to answer with using these dolls or stuffed toys or whatnot.
Yeah.
He came out later.
Was he the one that had severe issues because of like guilt and lying? Like,
yes, he came out. He even came to his mom right after the trial or during the trial. He was on his bed crying his eyes out, bawling because he felt so guilty about what he did to Ray Bucky, about what he said was absolutely a lie. And his mom came up to him. He's like, "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" And he's like, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." And his mom said, got him to tell him. His mom didn't believe him. His mom said, "No, that you really were touched." I was like, "No, he wasn't." People Ray Bucky served 5 years before he was released on bail. He still had to go through everything else, and we'll get into it. But it was real bad for that family.
Can we address one comment real fast?
Yeah, go.
Actually, Jennifer, they never proved that to be correct either.
What?
For the West Memphis 3,
they actually think that they're not talking. She's not talking about I can't think of the guy's name. The one with he has kind of a messed up head and he had a brain tumor.
I mean,
they did kind of suspect him.
Yeah.
But no, she's talking about the other kid's father who was actually terrible to one of the kids, and they do think it was him. There is no proof.
There's no, remember we're watching some documentary on it.
It was Paradise Lost.
Was it Paradise Lost?
But it was the third one where they finally started moving away from Ray.
But there was some circumstantial evidence that they kind of sort of linked, if I'm not mistaken, not to get off on a tangent, which we're really good about. And of course, we will get into that deeper.
Deeply.
The cigarettes, the type of cigarettes he smoked.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but that's still circumstantial.
But it was, she is talking about the stepfather, and they do think it was him. But it's circumstantial. There was nothing to prove, and honestly, Arkansas itself did not want to. They didn't want to admit they were wrong. They got what they wanted. I mean, the West Memphis 3 basically had to say, "Yeah, we're guilty. We're not guilty." That's how they got out, and they could never ever go after Arkansas for damages, which they've definitely deserved. They deserve millions. Their life was wrecked. I mean, Damien Eccles is lucky that he's a fantastic writer, and I think he's a tattoo artist now in New York.
Yeah, he is.
I would love to talk to Damien Eccles. He was one of my.
I'd get a tattoo from him.
He was one of my heroes when I was growing up because I saw all the stuff with Paradise Lost and HBO. Then I really started looking into it, and I was like, man, being a young metalhead kid. We're here in Bakersfield. That's how it was. Like, you're going to go shoot up a school or something like that. No, I listen to heavy metal. Oh, you worship Satan. I don't worship anything.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Guys, I guess we should do this real fast though. I know that for those of you listening, you cannot see a trigger warning, but trigger warning for the content that we are speaking about. I know we probably should have said it a little bit sooner. But we are going to be talking about some very brutal subjects. We're going to be talking about child molestation, murder, all kinds of different, really sensitive topics. So it's not going to hurt our feelings if you do not join in right now. But, if you feel like doing so, stay. And also there's #replay.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
So.
All right. Raz, you were gonna say something, or
sorry?
Oh, I remember. So obviously I was born in '82, so there was a lot of the Satanic Panic that I missed altogether. Like that, I just not because I was sheltered, just because it didn't hit my little town in Ohio, right? Like a lot of it didn't really affect where I was. It wasn't until probably a little bit later in the '90s when I started getting more into LARPing. Did I start finding out more about the Satanic Panic? Because when Vampire the Masquerade was in its prime, it started making all the rounds to all the talk shows because there was that one guy that started a cult based on the game. They actually killed and drank the blood of the parents.
It was out of Louisiana, wasn't it, or something?
Yes. Yep. And then my mom was like, "Oh, it's like D&D all over again." I'd already been playing D&D for years. Like, what do you mean it's like D&D all over again? And that's what my mom was like, "Oh, son." And then it was the music, and then she just kind of went down and explained it all, and I was like, "Dude,
you have." Stephen P. Kitty Cat. You have what they would do with D&D books, the DM guides and stuff like that. They would burn them and be like, "See, look at the blue-green flames coming off that," and people were like, "It's burning the ink."
Do you know the? So I got to meet Gary Gygax and actually do a minor session with him once. Like I was quite young, and I learned something that day. The image from the DM's guide that specifically got the whole thing pointed towards them was the really shitty artwork that was actually done for the succubus in the monster manual.
Oh my god.
Dead
Really?
serious. And it's weird because a fun little fact that you guys probably don't want to know, in the 80s, there was not a lot of, 70s actually, there was not a lot of self-pleasuring material that was available to young boys, and that was also the most spoken about used picture for such things as well, which led to them parents discovering the picture and then the book, and they believe that like literally that was tied into how it was discovered that picture existed in the book, and it had devils and demons in it, and that's how it then exploded all over a
Well-
picture of a succubus that was badly drawn that kids were masturbating to.
You know, the ones who actually got off on the eye of the beholders were probably serial killers.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was probably about 12 or 13 when it really, really like went from a local like news story to like spreading across the nation. And like a lot of you guys out there that are younger than me and you take your children to daycare, those CCTV cameras that they have in daycare, 9 times out of 10, that was directly a result of this trial and
Yeah.
this scandal. I remember, and it was crazy because people were believing everything, even to hot air balloons, taking the kids in hot air balloons and moving them to places of satanic worship and ritualistic, sacrifice and all this kind of stuff. Even though none of the kids came up missing, so I don't know who they were sacrificing, but it was crazy.
They were replacing them with doppelgangers.
No,
Well,
actually,
the
that's.
crazy-
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the crazy thing about this is when we get into because this is based out of Manhattan Beach, and Manhattan Beach in California is L.A. County, right? It's L.A., right? Or is it a?
It's LA.
Well, I mean, L.A. or Orange, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it's LA. Definitely LA.
It's definitely L.A. Okay, well, it's definitely L.A. But my point is L.A. or it's even in the 80s. It's just every single foot of L.A. is just people, and the stuff they're gonna say in this to what happened, even as going as far as digging up bodies in a cemetery, is so far fetched.
That's generally where bodies are found.
Well,
Just saying.
But people were so naive to believe this. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about propaganda for a purpose, was 110% on this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
And like I look back and I think, how did anybody fall for that? But then that gets into the mass hysteria that builds off each other,
look at
See, you're asking who was being sacrificed. I think I have the answer here. The answer is tulpas, and I'll tell you why. So the 80s is that time when the 70s was crashing out from from the huge like all the acid and the shrooms, the psychedelics, and it crashed right into cocaine. So everybody lost their imaginations because of the result of the interacting of chemicals, and so they thought kids have imaginations. We'll build tulpas. We'll sacrifice the tulpas, and there we go. And that's what they need the kids.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, something that's been used-
And Tipper Gore started burning them too. So
Yep.
Yes. So an example of
because that was about the time doing all the burning of the heavy metal albums and all that kind of stuff. And it was
actually
nuts.
I usually call these documentaries to fuck with you guys, but this is a movie. It had Alexandria Daddario in it. It's called We Summon the Darkness, and the entire thing is about this small town in Indiana. Her father is a preacher, and she snuck out to a heavy metal show and meets these metalheads, invites them back, and then her and her friends start killing all the metalheads and blaming it on Satan. And then the father comes home. And it's a hilarious comedy horror, but it really speaks. And they talk about Satanic Panic quite a bit throughout the movie. Like, more as like a social commentary on that whole time period, but in a really interesting way that just makes you stop and think like, what the fuck? 'Cause they talk about the picketing, like all the everything. And it's a really interesting watch.
Oh, you were mentioning like people getting in a frenzy, basically, and it reminded me of a situation we had. I mean, I know.
it's hollow. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
It reminded me of a situation today that you can that we had the other day that you could basically liken the people to. So some of you may know, we had a situation where 5 dogs created a pack in our neighborhood, and only one of them was actually super aggressive. They came in, they attacked the kittens that were on our lawn, and that's the sad part of it. But it sent them into a frenzy where these dogs, who were otherwise quite docile when you got them separated from the group, we learned that as we were getting them, assisting, cornering them for, animal control and stuff. But all these dogs, once you separated them from the group, they were docile, they were friendly, they were totally cool to come up to you. But in a group, they completely frenzied and had this bloodlust. And it was absolutely insane to see. But people are the same exact damn way. It may not be like that they're going around trying to murder things, and I'm not saying
I don't know, man.
Either.
Have you seen the Black Friday rushes for like the Cabbage Patch Kids, Tickle Me Elmo? People lost limbs. People were murdered by trampling. I mean, and that's just over a popular Christmas toy. And not take it to something serious like religion, and imagine like how fucking magnified that then becomes.
Oh yeah. I mean but that's what I thought.
We saw it. We saw it with and granted, there may have been some other contributing factors such as the argot poisoning and things like that. But it's the same situation as like the Salem witch trials. It's the same situation that we went through during World War II with the internment camps here. Oh, yeah. It's the same situation we went through with McCarthyism, things like that.
I was going to take it back farther. Spanish Inquisition, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can find it all through.
No one suspects them though.
They're big.
But yeah, I mean, she's right. It's literally it's everywhere. It's and every country deals with it in their own way. Like there's just it's intense, man. It's intense.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to remember there's that term folie à deux, but I can't remember when it's like madness of many.
I think it's
folie à plusieurs. Yeah, folie à plusieurs. I think it is something like that. That's basically what it means, where it's like a shared psychosis. Folie à deux is the madness of 2. Folie à trois, madness of 3. Folie à plusieurs, I think, is madness of many.
The insane thing though with this is it's not exactly like I know everyone's it's with that is it's people actually believing whatever, but with this is slightly different because it's just people being bombarded with the media and everything coming out, and then they're just immediate. It's not exactly like when you pull a person away from it, like from this, and then you actually really show them what's going on and everything like that. They're immediately like, okay, something is wrong here. Maybe this is exactly what's going on.
That's exactly what that is.
Well,
when you pull the people away from each other, it's no longer a shared insanity. They actually, once you cut that link, they start thinking normal. But when they get back together, they have that same mentality, of one mind.
It's the concepts for addicts. It's why one of the biggest tenets of being an addict, like when you get out of a treatment facility, is to make sure that you're not spending all that time around the same people that have that same mindset. It's very similar because as soon as you're around that back again, you just kind of become that person and that thing again.
Fall back into old habits.
Yeah.
So
let's get into it then. I mean, I know we've been talking about it a lot and kind of tiptoeing around the pool, but
there are pictures of these ladies too. You would if you can bring
I can't. It won't let me save it properly.
You can't?
No, it saves it as a web, and you can't.
Trick. Okay, so just type the name of a file and then put .jpg because it'll trick it, and it's a thing, but it'll work.
It used to work on this computer. But that doesn't. It always reverts it back.
Weird. Yeah, it totally works on mine.
I don't know what's going on with it then. I'm
going to try this one.
I got it to work the other day. Fine.
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
I mean, it also depends on the site, too, because there's some things that you can do when you build websites to, make certain things not possible.
I do not like what they did here.
I don't know. Well, either way, these are young old ladies. Here you go. This is one of the Virginia. This is Virginia McMartin right here.
I wasn't going to bring it up yet, but okay.
No, this is one of the ladies that was accused of being one of the masterminds behind this satanic group of preschool, teachers and stuff like that.
Hey, you know what?
Hey, so are we talking about Granny White here?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck, if it's going to give her vision back, why not give Satan a try,
I had this teacher in preschool, and it's kind of on track here. Her name was Mrs. Reagan. And boy, did her name pretty much fit. Not Reagan, Regan.
But people do mispronounce that all the time.
She did not have the best hygiene. And
I know what you're about to tell me. Oh.
Yeah. One of her punishments for us when we were unruly is she would pin our heads between her thighs and have us face the class. I would gag regularly. And
it only takes one well-aimed vomit to end that situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
I think she probably learned because she pointed the kids the opposite direction.
No. Fuck that, because if I know this is going to happen and I know that I'm going to be a bastard that day and I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to take some baby oil and stick it on the side of my head so when she tries to grip me, I can just spin around and vomit and then I've saved everyone.
This person, it's...
My mother having been a teacher at that same school at the same time, because I went to her and I was like, this is gross. This is what she's doing. And I come to learn later on in life that not only was this teacher chewed out regularly for this practice, she didn't really wipe herself and she would leave things all over the toilet, if you catch my drift. Mrs. Regan, if you're still alive, I hope you have better hygiene because you're a fucking bitch.
Wet wipes, Mrs. Regan.
I'm going to suggest just a car wash. Just to strap her down, just take her flatbed truck, just a car wash.
But I mentioned this because
cheese and
hot wax and all.
You look at this lady and you're like, oh, how could she ever do that? No, some of these fucking old ladies are evil.
I don't think that. Virginia McMartin was not evil, actually, in no way, shape, or form. She was a very, very kind
my dad's mom was pretty fucking evil, I'll tell you that. Old ladies can be evil.
They can be.
All right. So, McMartin preschool trial. I guess let's start with that. Let me move this over here. The McMartin preschool trial was a daycare sexual abuse case in the 80s, prosecuted by the Los Angeles District Attorney Ira Rayner. Members of the McMartin family who operated a preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, were charged with hundreds of acts of sexual abuse of children in their care. Accusations were made in 1983. Arrests and pretrial investigation took place from 1984 to 1987, and trials ran from 1987 to 1990. The cases lasted 7 years, but resulted in no convictions, and all the charges were dropped in 1990. But by the case's end, it had become the longest and most expensive series of criminal trials in American history. The case was part of daycare sex abuse hysteria, a moral panic over alleged satanic ritual abuse in the 1980s and early 1990s. In 1983, Judy Johnson, mother of one of the Manhattan Beach, California preschool's young students, reported to the police that her son had been sodomized by her estranged husband and also by McMartin teacher Ray Bucky. Ray Bucky was a grandson of former founder Virginia McMartin and son of administrator Peggy McMartin Bucky. Johnson's belief that her son had been abused began when her son had painful bowel movements. What happened next is still disputed. Some sources state that at the time, Johnson's son denied her suggestion that his preschool teacher had molested him. whereas others say that he confirmed the abuse.
What happened with that is too, what they didn't let anybody know here, the prosecution, she was suffering, she was diagnosed schizophrenic, and she was suffering from mental issues. And then a side story here, how the son came into the care of the preschool. She literally, the mom, Judy, made him a lunch, didn't sign him up for the preschool, dropped him off at the school where the school's at. It's very, very busy highway. Dropped him off at the outside of the fence and left for the day.
What?
Good
Yes.
luck.
I didn't hear about that.
Virginia McMartin, I think, was I'm sorry, not Virginia. Peggy saw him and brought him in, and they just started taking care of him, even though they didn't have room. Told the mother, okay, we'll have room in the summertime, which is literally when they brought him in. They kept she kept dropping him off there here and there, but in the summertime is when the allegations, everything came out. They literally were just they were it's the very definition of no good deed goes unpunished.
Oh yeah.
They didn't want to see the kid get ran over by a car because he just bolted. And the kid, when this happened, was 2 years old. Dropped a 2-year-old off. Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah. And none of that came out in the trial. None of it did.
Well,
They couldn't even they didn't even bring the kid up as a witness because he was too young to realize what was going on.
Right.
so, in addition, Johnson also made several more accusations, including that people at the daycare had sexual encounters with animals, that Peggy drilled a child under the arms, and Ray flew in the air. Ray Bucky was questioned, but was not prosecuted due to lack of evidence. The police then sent a form letter to about 200 parents of students at the McMartin school stating that their children might have been abused and asked the parents to question their children. The text of the letter read, September 8th, 1983. Dear parent, this department is conducting a criminal investigation involving child molestation. 288 PC. Ray Bucky, an employee of Virginia McMartin's preschool, was arrested September 7th, 1983 by this department. The following procedure is obviously an unpleasant one, but to protect the rights of your children as well as the rights of the accused. This inquiry is necessary for a complete investigation. Records indicate that your child has been or is currently a student at the preschool. We are asking your assistance in this continuing investigation. Please question your child to see if he or she has been a witness to any crime or if he or she has been a victim. Our investigation indicates that possible criminal acts include oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttocks or chest area, and sodomy, possibly committed under the pretense of taking the child's temperature. Also, photos may have been taken of children without their clothing. Any information from your child regarding having ever observed Ray Bucky to leave the classroom alone with a child during any nap period, or if they ever observed Ray Bucky tie up a child, is important. Please complete the enclosed information form and return it to this department in the enclosed stamped return envelope as soon as possible. We will contact you if circumstances dictate the same. We ask you to please keep this investigation strictly confidential because of the nature of the charges and the highly emotional effect it could have on our community.
Wow.
Please do not discuss this investigation with anyone outside your immediate family. Do not contact or discuss the investigation with Raymond Bucky, any member of the accused defendant's family, or employees connected with the McMartin preschool. There is no, and this is in all caps, by the way, there is no evidence to indicate that the management of Virginia McMartin's preschool had any knowledge of this situation, and no detrimental information concerning the operation of the school has been discovered during this investigation. Also, no other employee in the school is under investigation for any criminal act.
They set this up. The LA sheriffs. That's who handled this. That's who the detectives and everything like that. You see why
That
people
should have caused them to throw this whole thing out.
it didn't.
Yeah.
If,
The detectives, all they had to do was do their job, go to each one individually like they're supposed to, and not this right here. Yeah, they set this up to put it in people's heads, and they set up a modern day witch hunt.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
With that letter, and because that right, like you said, right there, that letter should have, when that was stated, that should have thrown everything out, because all it did was have all these overprotective religious parents and stuff like that go, "Oh my God, my kid was touched. Were you touched?" And then them constantly questioning their kids. Then all of a sudden you have authority figures coming in and questioning their kids after this, and it snowballed from here. And yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things that pisses me off more than anything here, reading this stuff.
So one thing that needs to be mentioned here, Judy Johnson, the mother of the original child, was diagnosed with and hospitalized for acute paranoid schizophrenia. And in 1986 was found dead in her home from complications of chronic alcoholism before the preliminary hearing concluded.
So because two things happened here with this. Like I said before, the prosecution broke the law. They did not disclose this during the trial. They did not let the defense even know anything about that. Now, because no one knew anything about that, when she mysteriously showed up dead, it drove it even further into people's heads that yes, this is a satanic cult going around killing people, stuff like that. Because to keep the truth from coming out, it was like, no, she was a paranoid schizophrenic who died of alcohol poisoning. That's what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
she
almost
caused
like
all that.
intentionally letting it build into more and more conspiracy.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And those prosecutors never got in trouble for what they did here. Not one.
Of course not.
Sorry.
So several hundred children were then interviewed by the Children's Institute International, a Los Angeles-based abuse therapy clinic run by Key McFarland. The interviewing techniques used during the investigations of the allegations were highly suggestive and invited children to pretend or speculate about the supposed events. By spring of 1984, it was claimed that 360 children had been abused. Astrid Hoppenstall Hager performed medical examinations and took photos of what she believed to be minute scarring, which she stated was caused by anal penetration. Journalist John Earl believed that her findings were based on unsubstantiated medical histories. Later research demonstrated that the methods of questioning used on the children were extremely suggestive, leading to false accusations. Others believe that the questioning itself may have led to false memory syndrome among the children questioned. Only 41 of the original 360 ultimately testified in the grand jury and pretrial hearings, and fewer than a dozen testified at the actual trials. Michael
Can I say
P.
something real quick?
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say and that gets into the whole repressed memories. I mean, that was huge back then when all this was going on. Like when this started to come out, like that was the next new thing. Was that you behave the way you behave because something traumatic happened to you. You're a victim of something, and you have blocked it out. And that's why you robbed that bank, and that's why you beat up your child, and that's why you did this, because you've got memories of something that happened to you that you don't remember. And people were talked into believing this stuff. It was crazy.
I can say sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say when I was in the urgent care on Sunday,
I felt so bad. I'm sorry.
by the way, guys, I had salmonella. I guess I'm getting over salmonella poisoning.
She owns salmonella poisoning, is what she's trying to say.
Yeah, basically. I'm still queasy, but so mind you, I was already sitting on the ground, because I felt more comfortable because the wall and the floor were way cooler than everything else. And the exam table was like leaning in a weird position, which just hurt. And if I had to sit up to puke, it just wasn't fun. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm sitting down on the ground with my puke bag. And this, mind you, the doctor had told me, okay, we're not going to do any tests. I am trypophobic, and it's something I'm working on, but I'm not good at working at it.
What
And
exactly is that for people who don't know?
trypophobia is the fear of hypodermic needles specifically. It's not necessarily a fear of like getting poked with a needle or getting tattoos or piercings. It's specifically hypodermic needles where something is going into your veins, something is going into your body. I am trypophobic. I do try to work on it, but at the same time, I'm just going to tell you I feel like it's a healthy fear. But, there's that. Doctors disagree with me.
I actually share that one with you. I share that fear with you. It used to be pretty bad for me. And then I was going like some health issues years ago and had to do home injections for something. And I found that when I was in control of it myself, I did all I knew it was in it. I don't know, something about it changed in my brain a little bit, like just enough where it still bothers me, but I can just not look. I can know it's there, but if I don't look, I can trick my brain into just not thinking about it. And
that doesn't work
I'm mostly okay
reason.
now.
The funny part? The doctor was like, do you want to do it yourself? I'm like,
what?
No.
Do I look like a heroin addict? I don't know I don't know how to do this shit.
Right. For the longest time, I had no idea what I was doing, but no one would do it for me. But my insurance wouldn't cover getting it done by the doctor. So I'm like, I either don't get this I need or I do it. And luckily, it was one of the ones where you just had to kind of like pinch the back of the skin and kind of put it in. Mm-hmm. So I found ways to do it for myself. But that's the closest I've ever come to like actually injecting anything in my body. I didn't not like it at all, but it helped me for some reason get to the point where now, if I just tell them, don't tell me it's coming. I'll stand here. If you got to give me a shot in the hip or whatever, just walk up behind me and do it. Don't count down. Don't get cute about it. Just walk up and do it, and then it's done. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have it building up, knowing it's going to happen, because that's the worst.
I've been able to handle it in certain situations, like when I had Bell's palsy and a lot of stuff like that. But in this situation, I was already having a bad day. I was throwing up since 6 a.m. At that point, it was already like noon. And I'm sitting on the floor because it was a lot cooler. I was overheating every time I threw up. And
you're probably dehydrated.
Absolutely dehydrated, but every time I took a drink of water, I threw up again. So
that's one of those situations where they probably should have said, no, we're giving you an IV right now of fluids.
They can't give you an IV at urgent care.
They did in mine.
You were in the ER.
No, the urgent care for Kaiser, that's urgent care.
That's different, though. But anyway, I'm sitting on the floor, and they had already told me, hey, we're not going to do it because you said you don't want to do it. I can't force you to do it. The lady walks in with needles. Okay, let's do this. I'm on the floor already, and I just started crying. And she walks out, and I hear her say, ugh, she's on the floor crying right now. And I was like, okay. And she comes back in, and I was like, first of all, I was already on the floor before I started crying. And then she goes, oh, you have past trauma, don't you?
What?
Yeah, with assholes like you.
And I was like,
I'd be like, I'm about to give you present trauma.
Yes.
But just the thing that flew out of her mouth, that's where the whole story was going, by the way, was, you have past trauma, don't you?
The logic behind that whole past life regression is just complete bullshit. In the vast or any past life, any of that stuff, like trauma from your past that you've covered up. Look, someone who has actually gone through sexual abuse, you remember it very vividly.
Yes.
For the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It never goes away. It's always there. Something triggers it and comes right back. Now, people, how they deal with those flashbacks, it varies from person to person,
Well, and in rare cases, you do get the split personalities to where it's like one personality tries to protect the other personality by blocking the memories. But that's usually extremely rare.
And there's usually other comorbidities that are actually technically not the comorbidity, or that comorbidity. They're usually the dominant issue, and then your regression and the split personality are actually the comorbidity with it.
Yeah.
Right.
To be fair, I guess she's like, you have past trauma. I was like, well, when I was a kid, we went to something called Care Fair because, we didn't have the money to get all the shots that I needed through like normal means. And so they did this thing that was called Care Fair, where low income households could go over here and they can get their inoculations. We went, I started freaking out. Mind you, this was a good time to maybe teach me that they weren't that bad. But no, when I started freaking out, 10 nurses held me down. And they just gave me a bunch of shots.
That's the way of it back then. That's how it was. So that's probably where your past trauma came from. Was the fact
I have a similar story.
By people holding you down and giving you shots. But that makes sense to me because my fear of dentists were from when I was 4 years old. My dad was in the military, had to go see the military dentist. It hurt really bad.
When I was a kid, I got my head busted open by like a school bully. It hit me in the head with something metal on the bus. And
I did that.
Back then, they had to it wasn't like an MRI machine, but it was but it was open because when you were a kid, they had to keep you still because they had to actually put the numbing needle like in your scalp. Well,
did they do the burrito?
Yeah. And on top of that, when they were doing the whole thing, there was a power surge while they were doing it. And it triggered some fail-safe, so the needle just kept going over and over.
Okay,
and you didn't get superpowers?
Oh, I don't know how. I mean, I'm just drinking the city water in Dayton. I feel like I should be a mutant by now, in general. But no, and that's where my whole being traumatized about the whole thing was. And like every now and then, I'll just have like 10 seconds of a dream where I'm strapped to something that's happening. I'm like, fuck, and then I'm all right again. Like. It's weird though, but like that totally fucked me up for the longest time.
My past trauma came. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There was like after the first couple injections, like the first couple goes, there was nothing inside of it. It was just the hollow needle. But I'm still good with piercings, tattoos, anything. But because they told me I was getting a chemical in there, so in my little child brain, they're just it's not just the needle. Every time I'm feeling it, they're injecting it again and again because I don't know any better as a kid. Like
that would have been horrifying.
It was. It was. I don't think I spoke to anyone for like weeks. Like I didn't even speak a word for weeks.
Wow.
We I had a similar situation. Well, not getting beat up, but I busted my head open on a trundle bed, so they had to burrito me and stitch my head. So then I was like. Oh. Yeah. So needles, no bad.
My past trauma comes from me getting my first CT scan, which was back in May.
Yesterday.
And they turn around and they were like, the guy was the technician was like, okay, he injected a dye in me. It was actually super cool because it was like one of those like things you would see, like, just how they did it. And it all just goes down, and it was just like the sci-fi movies. I was like,
"Oh yeah,
am I going to get atomic powers?"
Makes you feel though. Oh,
that's what I'm getting to here. So the next day, dear God, the hangover from it was terrible. But
that might have
so
also
bad.
been the morphine they gave you.
Oh, everything, yeah. But I was sitting there and like he goes, okay, and he gave it to me. He's all, you're gonna feel a sensation. You're gonna feel like you're peeing yourself. It's gonna start from your head, going down to your toes. And as I'm going into the CT scanner, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, oh, there it is.
That's the stuff.
I was like, I kept feeling around. He's all, you didn't pee yourself, but yeah, that's what it feels like. I was like, it does feel like that. It's so weird.
It's like hot. For me, it was like having some sort of hot and cold flashes, sort of.
Oh yeah.
I
was like, this is what an old lady feels like. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so this is what we're moving around, right? See, because right now he's panicking, and he's a demon from hell, which means he's satanic. So he's satanic panicking that Mother de la Moore is going to just appear over there and whoop his ass for that one.
I wasn't making the references. I'm sorry, I wasn't making the references to Mother de la Moore. I was just saying in general.
Oh my God! Just keep digging your hole deeper.
Because that's why he started laughing halfway through saying it and continued anyway. He meant nothing by it though.
He not like he didn't even have to say that. Now he just insinuated that I'm old.
I wasn't saying you.
The best part is if you keep doing this to him, later on he will be obsessing about this for the entire night. I'm just letting you know.
And she knows where he lives. Like
148 years old. That's pretty stinking old. So
dude,
yes, I am.
You're a year older than the guy from House 2.
He one time he said, "I want to go eat. Let's get this the fuck over with. I want some pizza."
I got good pizza today.
I thought I muted the mic.
I was like stuffing my face with pizza during like the pre-show, and we were just sitting here like that's what I was doing. Like I was like down here like stuffing my fucking face with pizza.
It took him like 2 weeks to stop obsessing over
I
it.
didn't mean to. That's not what I meant. I mean, I was just saying, like, what's going to happen now later on. Be like, I didn't mean that about Odd Mother. I was talking about
It's
this old
okay.
ladies in
I
general.
am old, Frank. It's okay. It's
You are
okay.
not old.
And yes, I do have the hot flashes. So there you go.
I've got the hot flashes.
I've got them flashes.
I'm never ever gonna live this down. I am so sorry.
It's the brain pain. Ow!
This is when you need a. This is when you need a Slippy-based distraction. Just to make everybody forget about what he just said.
I think one of my dogs started a fight out there. You want to go to commercial fast and
We don't really have commercials on podcasts.
Oh, that's right. Never mind.
But exit
Make one up for you.
Acker.
Go check on it real fast, so we'll keep things going.
Today's show brought to you by Lucifer's House of Ham.
It's attached.
You want me to go do it real fast? So,
Just flashed everybody my tetas.
boobs.
It's cool. We're talking about Satan. I think it's if there's a time where that is acceptable, it's now.
But
And the views go up.
Satan and titties. But you guys, do you see where
Love Satan.
the witch
Satan is good.
Well.
She's not bad.
It's from the movie The Burbs with Tom Hanks. I love it.
Yeah. Freaking it was Empire Records. It always reminded that part where she's
that
like
too, yeah.
She's all so I was talking to God and she says, "Yo, what's up?"
I just got my family to watch that like earlier this year.
I laugh my ass off at that part every single time. I seriously, to this day, still believe that any record shop could raise the money to buy it for themselves.
Okay. And totally throw a badass concert at the last minute on the roof. Why not?
Exactly. And just have some random chick. Was it Renee? No, it wasn't Renee Zellweger. Who was it?
No, Renee Zellweger was in that movie.
No, was the chick?
She was in it though.
No, it was the chick from Mallrats.
Oh yeah, Shannon Doherty. Yeah, Shannon Doherty.
No, not,
that's right.
Shannon Doherty wasn't in it. No, it was
Who am I thinking of?
the
Oh yeah, the one that
blonde-haired
also played Amy in Chasing Amy.
Yes.
Okay,
Amy.
See,
There
I'm
you go.
thinking of
The girl
Dogma.
played
Never
Amy.
mind. I'm thinking about what's the meaning of life, God. Boop.
Dogma.
Alanis Morissette.
I love that movie.
Nickel Coffin shit
And who the fuck are you? And just kisses him and like he's like, But
speaking of Satanic Panic, Dogma.
Dogma was great. The whole movie was based around all that stuff. So, but we see where it's actually going here with the with what they did with this letter here. It literally did make a modern day witch hunt with it, like we were saying before. People started getting scared. People started worrying what was going on here, and instead of doing the investigation properly, like they should have, going door to door and telling after the fact, hey, we suspect this is what's happening here. We need to question your child here. And what they did wrong, or what they did wrong, but they did it purposely to find answers, the answers they wanted. When they're leading kids and stuff like that, the whole leading the kids, you're supposed to let things organically happen. If they don't know what's going on here, then if nothing happened, nothing's going to come up from it when they're questioning these kids. But when you come in here, and the main thing with the dolls is going, hey, touch, where did you get touched on here, and where did or whatnot here. Even having the anatomically correct dolls really put these kids in a bad position here. I don't.
Well, and that particular doctor. Oh gosh, what was her name again? Hold on, let me find it.
McFarlane, Kay McFarlane.
Kay McFarlane. She has a whole story of her own too. I don't remember it right off the top of my head.
She supposedly leaked info to some dude she was dating in the news media.
In the news media, but there was some question about like her actual, I don't want to say credentials, but like professional experience or something. I can't remember, that would be something I just don't feel real comfortable about really getting into depth because I don't have the information in front of me. But I remember when I covered this years ago, she has her own story. Like
it was insane too, because even when they went to go to seek damages after the fact, they couldn't get anything out of her. They could not get anything out of her. The court sided with her, with McFarlane, and it was like, you wrecked these people's lives because you were fame seeking here. You clearly were fame seeking.
Yeah.
You interrogated these kids until you had the answer you wanted. And this wasn't actually like, okay, we're talking to them for 15 minutes. This was talking to these kids, each one for hours, until they literally came out with the answers they wanted to hear. Instead
sometimes
of
days or weeks.
Yeah, constantly going back to them. And the main thing what they did with these parents too, when she went to them, she showed her credentials off as they knew everything, and these parents went right along with it. Okay, obviously this is a professional here, so she knows how to get answers out of these kids. The reality of it was
this is a pivotal age too, especially for young mothers, and that being their only child. The child is like, very, very young, and you know how moms can get. We all had friends that had those moms. Their child could do no wrong. Everybody was, taking advantage of their child, and just extremely, extremely overprotective of their kids. So you get a letter like that, and that's the first thing they're going to do. Is they're going to question that poor child to the point where the child doesn't know if he's coming or going.
I'm sorry, our notes are up, and I can't see your face right now, Odd Mother, and I can't see Raz, and then like Akal was setting her cup down as the same thing. So I guess Raz was bumping his mic, and I was like, "How are you making as much sound?"
Oh, I barely moved something, and like the cord yanked my mic, and my mic flew halfway across the room just now. That was, and I couldn't mute it. Like I was just like watching it happen, going, "Oh shit!"
Everyone. I mean, when you're watching this live, everyone can see everything clearly. But on my end, I see notes in front of my face right now. I don't see anything else.
It's called shame blocking. You're just ashamed of that comment earlier tonight. You just want to see our judging faces.
You were talking about Odd Mother here. You said she was old.
Take these off.
And there you go.
I did not say she was old. I'm sorry.
But you just admitted, like, and like in the third person, you just third person yourself and admitted that you said that. That was so. I'm gonna pull that. I'm gonna pull that clip later for you.
Not to get too terribly off topic, but this is gonna be way off topic. I'm gonna squirrel it for a minute. But Hexus, you're not the only one. When our daughter was really young, we were watching some movie, okay, and the movie took place during like the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution. And she said, she looked at me just as serious as a heart attack. She said, "Mom, what was it like when you had horse and buggies?" I'm like, how do I know? That was way before my time. And of course, Oddfather just like cracks up. He's in the hall rolling.
You know what I've been getting a lot lately, and because I'm going around, it really like has been. I mean, it's been making me feel like a gentleman and stuff like that. But everywhere I go, when I go into places and I ask questions and stuff like that, they're like all these young people, girls, men, or girls. God damn it, I'm fucking up so bad here today. All these young people, they're all like, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about here. And I was like, "Hey, can I use your restroom?" "Oh, sure, yeah, it's right over there." And then it's almost like the whole, "Sir, let me direct you to where it's at." I was like, I'm not that old.
I can walk on my own, thank you.
Exactly. Then I get into the restroom. I'm looking in the mirror. I was like, "Oh, I see why they're calling you sir, because it's really gray. Everything is gray now." Sorry.
Anyway, sorry.
All right. So let's get back into this. So Michael P. Maloney, a clinical psychologist and professor of psychiatry, reviewed videotapes of the children's interviews. Maloney testified as an expert witness on interviewing children. Testifying as an expert witness on interviewing children was highly critical of the techniques used, referring to them as improper, coercive, directive, problematic, and adult-directed in a way that that forced the children to follow a rigid script.
Yes.
He concluded that many of the kids' statements in the interviews were generated by the examiner. Transcripts and recordings of the interviews contain far more speech from adults than children, and demonstrated that despite the highly coercive interviewing techniques used, initially the children were resistant to interviewers' attempts to elicit disclosures. The recordings of the interviews were instrumental in the jury's refusal to convict by demonstrating how children could be coerced to giving vivid and dramatic testimonies without having experienced actual abuse. The techniques used were shown to be contrary to the existing guidelines in California for the investigation of cases involving children and child witnesses.
Can I say something right here?
Mhm.
So just for people watching that aren't familiar with this particular case, what from our notes, because I'm reading along with the same notes, what you just read was not on a timeline of they were arrested and this is what happened. There was, if I'm not mistaken, there were like 2 or 3 years between complete mass hysteria and someone finally telling the truth. Like, didn't they sit, if I'm not mistaken, in jail for a long time before the trial ever got started?
Peggy got she had a mental break, and so she went to a mental facility, I think, and she was there only for a couple years. So that during the we'll get into the preliminary hearings, which is where his defense, Ray Bucky's defense attorney was a genius, and he knew exactly how to do this. He knew that people were starved. I'm going to misquote him here, but he studied. I'm paraphrasing. He studied law throughout the ages and stuff like that, and like how people handled it even back in the 16th century and stuff like that. And he saw that people are quick to kill the scapegoat, and so what he did was he purposely. I'm pretty sure he went to Ray and was like, "Hey, this isn't going to be fast. We're going to drag this out for years." This was actually done on purpose on his behalf because he knew after it was dragged out for years, people would start turning on the accusers and
forgetting
and stuff like that, which is what needed to happen here. So the preliminary hearings didn't start until 84. It didn't go, and it ended after 2 years, I think in 86. The trial didn't start until 88. So, and 5 years of that, Ray was in jail, not prison, county jail, and which is actually
awaiting trial.
Exactly, and which is actually worse than being in prison. And he went through it, and then finally, someone was able to. He was able to finally afford bail, and he was released into his lawyer's custody. But
I just wanted to say that because it sounds like it was like somebody being silly and like the voice of reason, and it wasn't like that. There was a lot of time between what happened and what you just got through talking about.
What the crazy part about all of this is, when we're going to get into this part too here, there were a total of 7 people on trial here. During the preliminary hearings, 5 of them charges were dropped.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that is not a red herring, I don't know what is. Yeah. You have 5 people who are also 5 other people who are accused of being a part of this, and then all of a sudden they're like, none of these charges are going to stick to these people. Get rid of them. But they still keep Ray Bucky and Peggy Bucky in part of this. I want to say the Victoria McMartin, the grandmother, charges were dropped against her too. It was like she was supposedly the ringleader of all this.
Yeah.
Right. So some of the accusations were described as bizarre, overlapping with accusations that mirrored the emerging satanic abuse panic. It was alleged that in addition to having been sexually abused, that the children saw witches fly, traveled in hot air balloons, were taken through underground tunnels even. When shown a series of photographs by Danny Davis, the McMartin's lawyer, one child identified Chuck Norris as their abuser. Yeah.
I forgot about
Norris.
that.
Fun fact about Chuck Norris. This one time, he went to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now we can only refer to them as the islands.
Yep. Now, true fact about Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris.
I'm going to call him Touch Norris now after this whole conversation.
True fact.
That's your show
when I
title.
was younger, I did martial arts. I was in a lot of tournaments and stuff like that. And there was one specific tournament that I went to that I actually was not competing in. People from my dojo were competing, and my sensei, if you want to call him that, was actually competing as well. Turned out Chuck Norris was also competing against him.
No one competes against Chuck Norris. They just lose.
And I got Chuck Norris's signature.
Oh, that's too cool.
So yeah,
That
that
is
was
so
really
cool.
cool. But so let's get back into this. So again, one of the children identified Chuck Norris as one of the abusers, which we all know is not true. Some of the abuse was alleged to have occurred in secret tunnels beneath the school. Several excavations turned up evidence of old buildings on the site and other debris from before the school was built, but no evidence of any secret chambers or tunnels were found. There were claims of orgies at car washes and airports and of children being flushed down toilets to secret rooms where they would be abused and then cleaned up and presented back to their parents.
I'm confused. So does
People
it like
were
open into a
believing
water
this stuff, Brad.
slide, or I know
remember
that.
the toilet thing.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it. There was a big thing about it. Oddly enough, in the Harry Potter universe, there is actually a place where the wizards get down, where they actually go down the toilet, and that's actually a low-key nod at that intentionally.
Wow.
It's funny to
Of
think
course,
about.
I always think of like Resident Evil.
Or Scooby Doo, you flush the toilet and the whole like wall goes tweet tweet.
One of the big things was I don't think they mentioned. Did they mention the airplane?
we're just getting there right now.
Oh, sorry.
So there were, like I said, that there were claims of orgies at the car wash, the airports, children being flushed down toilets to secret rooms where they would be abused and then cleaned up and presented back to their parents. Some children interviewees talked of a game called Naked Movie Star and suggested that they were forcibly photographed nude.
That's one thing they actually focused on majorly with the kids. And the reason why they focused on that, because it was a little like rhyme the kids made up, and then they're like, okay, and they literally just focused on that, and they're like, oh, clearly they're making them play a really messed up pedophilic game here. And the reality was these kids were just made up. They just made this rhyme up, and they just kept doing it over and over again.
And so during trial testimony, some children stated that the Naked Movie Star game was actually a rhyming taunt used to tease other children.
Yeah.
What you say is what you are. You're a naked movie star.
Yeah.
And had nothing to do with being naked and taking pictures. So Judy Johnson, who made the initial allegations, made bizarre and impossible statements about Raymond Bucky, including that he could fly. Though the prosecution asserted that Johnson's mental illness was caused by the events of the trial, Johnson had admitted to them that she was mentally ill beforehand. Evidence of Johnson's mental illness was withheld from the defense for 3 years. And when provided was in the form of sanitized reports that excluded Johnson's statements at the order of the prosecution. One of the original prosecutors, Glenn Stevens, left the case in protest and stated that other prosecutors had withheld evidence from the defense, including the information that Johnson's son did not actually identify Ray Buckey in a series of photographs. Stevens also accused Robert Philibosian
Mhm.
to the deputy district attorney on the case of lying and withholding evidence from the court and defense lawyers in order to keep the Buckys in jail and prevent access to exonerating evidence.
So
You've got to keep in mind too, and it's kind of like the West Memphis Three. I mean, some of these lawyers were looking to make a name for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And this was a big case.
Well, look at the judge in the West Memphis Three. He went on to become, was it a state senator or something like that?
Yeah.
And because he went on to become a state senator, that's when they were finally able to, because it was that one judge who just kept saying, no, they're never getting out. And everything went right back to that one judge for years after the trial. And he kept denying.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until he became, a state senator that they went to another judge, or finally went to the Arkansas Supreme Court. And they're like, okay, we can let them out, but they have to basically say they're guilty, but not guilty. It was some weird thing that only
so
Arkansas
they can't get
has.
sued. It's so that they couldn't get sued.
Exactly.
So 2 trials were conducted for the McMartin preschool case. The first lasted from July 13th, 1987 to January 18th, 1990, while the second lasted from May 7th, 1990 to July 27th, 1990. On March 22nd, 1984, Virginia McMartin, Peggy McMartin Buckey, Ray Buckey, Ray's sister Peggy Ann Buckey, and teachers Mary Ann Jackson, Betty Rader, and Babette Spittler were charged with 115 counts of child abuse, which was later expanded to 321 counts of child abuse involving 48 children. In the 20 months of preliminary hearings, the prosecution, led by Lyle Rubin, that's how I'm assuming you say that, presented their theory of sexual abuse. The children's testimony during the preliminary hearings was inconsistent. Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pasder, co-authors of the now discredited Satanic Ritual Abuse autobiography Michelle Remembers, met with the parents and children involving the case and were believed by the initial prosecutor, Glenn Stevens, to have influenced the children's testimony.
Yes, isn't it real?
Yeah.
So what usually goes on in a preliminary hearing, the prosecution is basically leading it, and they're trying to prove that they have sufficient evidence to go on to trial. What Ray and Peggy's defense attorneys did, because they had 2 separate attorneys, but they were, especially Ray's attorney, he was a badass. They were aggressive during the preliminary hearings, and they cross-examined the crap out of everybody and did everything they can to keep things going for that long. It's still to this day is the longest preliminary hearings in United States history. Because it was done purposely. He even says it after the fact. No, we did this on purpose to make sure these people had the best chance they can get because they knew it was going to go to trial. They knew everything like that. So they wanted to discredit as many witnesses as possible, which they practically discredited every single one of them.
Right.
These were people up on the sacrificial altar of public opinion, and people get rabid when it comes to stuff like that. We've seen it. I mean, there's certain elements of that going on to this day. You know,
we see it.
I don't like somebody. Why don't you like them? I don't know.
We see it in all the little Facebook groups out here that all of them are like, oh, screw them over there at PBDC Collective. They're doing stuff that's not us.
Right.
Yeah.
Go take another hit off your crack pipe, people.
But he like I said, they masterfully did this, and then going on the trial, what was I going to say about the note? Sorry, I'm getting my thoughts together in my head here. When it came down, what I said in the notes, when they destroyed these kids' lives too, it was what they did to them, forcing them to, not forcing them, but coercing their stories out of them, all this other stuff, putting them on trial, putting them up there for the prosecution and the defense attorneys to do this to him. The defense attorney had no choice; he had to go after them and be aggressive, even with the children. But they literally didn't have to do this. They saw one of the things with the airplanes. It didn't happen. What is there an echo?
Echo.
Uh-oh.
Mhm.
It's not on.
It's on y'all's end.
Go ahead. Nope, it's Raz.
Wow.
Sorry, we just muted you. What one of the allegations was they didn't. One of the teachers had a plane, and they would fly them to Palm Springs to molest them. That was one of the allegations. And then the big one was the tunnels. And you had these people going in and investigating. And they're like, "Did you find tunnels? Did anybody have a plane?" They're like, "No, there was no room under this building or anything like that." But they stuck to those stories that it was happening there, that they really were flushed down toilets.
Well, honestly,
So-
the real child abuse was what was going on to get these children to
It very much
bear
was
false
so.
witness.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, I was gonna say, so I will. You know what? We will address a couple of comments
Okay.
because some of the people that just came in. I just wanted to let you know we're not ignoring you. We're just making sure that we get through this. This is our podcast. We will address you gradually. We're going to let them kind of build up and then keep addressing. So, Mariah, welcome, and we will address that shortly.
Hi, Mariah.
One of the things that I wanted to mention, being one of the children in a case like this, and I'll put myself out there like that. Having been one of the children in a case like this, these people have absolutely no souls.
Mhm.
Putting me up there on the stand at the time, I was probably around. I had just gone to the high school, but the case started a little sooner than that. I literally had an adult man tell the jury, "Well, look at her figure." I'm sorry. Did you just say, "Look at my figure"? What the fuck does that have to do with somebody touching a 3-year-old?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because I didn't look like this when I was 3. You sick son of a bitch.
And
Right.
This corresponds into the opposite side, where they were coercing these children to say things. They were quite literally abusing these kids, holding them in rooms for hours, and with adults going in with toys or dolls that are anatomically correct, showing them. And then these kids are like, one, that makes kids shy away to begin with. Two, it literally just they wanted to go home. They
It
wanted to
steals
do
their childhood away from them.
yeah. They wanted to these were authority figures, and they wanted to do what they thought was right. They also, being kids, they want to go along with everything else. They don't want to be known as the outcast or anything like that. So that's exactly how they treated these kids. Terrible.
Well, I guess my point was the people who are on prosecution or whatever, are doing this, or in some cases defending the perpetrators. They do this. They go full bore without thinking about how this is going to affect children's lives in the future while they're adults, without thinking about how they're going to end up having to go through therapy, not just because of what happened to them or what didn't happen to them, but because of how they were treated by the adults that were supposedly trying to protect them.
And then you also have to look at the kids that this happens to, how it takes away from their stories, when people are going to be like, "Oh, well, more than likely you're making this up," and when they really were molested and stuff like that, because
it's kind of like the whole cry wolf scenario.
Exactly.
So I want to address Mariah, and then let's get back into the the stuff. The thing is, all of this is a prime example of people indoctrinating children to justify their own dislikes or things that they do not understand.
Yep.
Children are malleable. When you push these stories in and they make a story to justify their own monologue, it corrupts the whole process.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Perfectly said.
Absolutely. These people believe that, we'll just say, since it's Satanic Panic, they believe that people who believe in Satan or worship Satan or follow Satanism or any of these things are like baby-eating monsters.
Well,
and
that's another thing real fast before we get back into it. You brought up earlier, Mother, the poking under the underarms and stuff like this and whatnot. And it was like, well, there's no marks on these kids in any way, shape, or form, and people still went along with it. You look at that one dipshit comedian, Mike Warnke, who he literally came out and just capitalized on the Satanic Panic, and during the 80s and stuff like that. Like he went out there and would, talk about how at one point in his life he was, part of these.
Explain to everybody who he was, because I don't think a lot of people.
So
know
Mike Warnke,
about this guy. I remember him.
He was a stand-up comedian, and he would go around the churches and stuff like that, and he would use comedy, which he was a absolutely terrible comedian. If you could imagine Gallagher, who smashed watermelons, but horrible. I mean,
but he sold himself as a recovering Satanist.
Yes, and then so what he also did, he would tell his story that he was part of all these satanic rituals where they murdered people for Satan, sacrificed them to Satan. And when he went, he majorly toured in the Bible Belt of the South, which is
I remember
the Bible Belt.
I remember, and he sold tapes.
Tapes, everything like that of his terrible comedy, everything along those lines, and then he would tell his story, and he made millions off these people. He turned around and
believed them.
Not one person in the middle of any of his shows stood up and said, well, you should turn yourself in and you should go talk to the police about this and you should turn yourself in and do your time. Not one person called him out on his bullshit. Not one.
My stepdad,
he's still active on YouTube to this day.
His church sold those tapes and he listened to that guy, and that's when, like, that was at the height of when, like, parents, and I don't know if you remember it, but it would be on the news and stuff like that, kind of like the whole thing in the 60s about your kid being a dope smoker or whatever, to where parents were like literally taking their kids like Judas Priest albums and things like that and burning them. I mean, it was like it was their job to save this generation from Satan. I mean, it was crazy.
It was insane. And then every Satanist, every real Satanist out there is going, we don't do any of that. Have you read them?
When Anton LaVey started getting really popular, and the Church of Satan and all this kind of stuff really came into the limelight.
And then you have Anton LaVey going out there like reading off the what's it called again? The not nine noble virtues. That's the Viking thing. What's the tenets?
The 7 tenets.
The 7 tenets, and it all basically revolves around: don't hurt kids, don't do stuff that people don't want you to do. It's stuff like that. I was like, every Satanist I know is a very productive member of society who would never touch a kid, never do anything like this.
It's just the Hollywood hysteria.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You know what?
Here,
because this actually does tie into this, and we're not repping a certain religion or whatever, but our podcasts are a lot different than our actual.
I will say this right now: if I were to be a religious person, I am closer to a Satanist than anything else. But I am not religious in any way, shape, or form.
We don't talk about religion
I know.
in general. So again, we do reference religion. We don't talk about politics unless, again, it has something to do with something that we're talking about, but we don't judge it. But here you go. These are the 7 fundamental tenets of Satanism. One should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable and subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify and resolve any harm that might have been caused. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
Is that the one from LaVey, or is that the one from someone else? LaVey also went as far to say, "Don't harm children. Do not." His were the if a woman does not accept your advances, then you are to stop. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, those were just the tenets. There are.
There's the 11. What is it? What is it? I think.
So here you go. Oh, where'd it go? Why is it moving?
I don't know. I did an update on the computer. It's weird now.
You messed up my computer. Okay.
This is my computer. Your laptop's over there. I'm kidding.
Anyway, let me see if I can.
It's fine.
Okay. Do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them. When in another's lair, show him respect or do not go there. If a guest is in your lair, or if a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal. Do not take that which does not belong to you unless it is a burden to the other person and he cries out to be relieved. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. Do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. Do not harm little children. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your own food. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him. I'm not going to lie. I love that last one.
You've got a little Machiavelli going on there.
I love Anton LaVey. He's a badass. I would have loved to actually talk to this guy.
And then again, we're talking about the Satanic Panic aspect, so I feel like this part actually does tie into it quite well. Some other aspects, the 9 satanic statements. Now tell me, guys, does this sound like people who are going to be sacrificing little babies? It doesn't to me. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse, than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. Satan represents all of these so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years.
It's very true.
And then, of course, there's the 9 satanic sins: stupidity, pretentiousness, solipsism. I can never say that.
What is that exactly?
Raz.
You're including
Did we
me
lose
now
you?
because there's a word.
I'm sorry.
I'm just showing.
Is it my turn?
Yeah. So
Solipsism.
So basically, that is the concept that the self is all that can be known to exist. It's one of his most well-known theories about how you are your own God. Basically, you're the only being that you can count on at any point in time.
Well, they're considering that as a sin.
Are they considering the selfish aspect of it?
Yes.
Yes, it's the selfish. It's specifically the selfish aspect of that, where you put yourself above everyone else because of that belief.
Yeah,
because you're not above anyone else.
Herd conformity, lack of perspective, forgetfulness of past orthodoxies, counterproductive pride, and lack of aesthetics. I find that lack of aesthetics is just a great
In other words, be
sin.
fashionable.
You need to look good.
Be fashionable, motherfuckers.
Wow.
But it's, yeah.
I mean, okay, so I mention all these things because the stuff that they're being accused of is ridiculous. It literally says within there, don't hurt kids. If somebody if you make an unwanted advance on a woman, fuck you.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself higher than anybody else.
Yes. Take facts. Acknowledge scientific facts and don't twist them to your own rhetoric.
Right.
Like
basic shit.
Basic shit that should really.
This is what I fall. This is like my number one rule of everyone around me. It's called the "don't be a dick" rule, which pretty much covers most of that. Straight up, like literally, like even like my hunters at the hunt, like in my own family, like that's my rule. Just do what you want to do in life. Just don't be a dick.
I think we reference that quite often. So it is a very good rule.
I like that rule.
I do live by those things. The minute you're a dick to me, I'll smash you in the face. I will not feel bad about it.
And that's the thing. Like we can have an argument, disagree, but that doesn't mean you're being a dick. You can totally be a cool human being and disagree with me. But if you're gonna be a dick about anything,
look, it's the difference between being a dick and being a fucking dick.
We have come to a point in society where people feel like you can't disagree and still be friends, and it's the most foreign idea to me because like I don't seriously if all my friends always agreed with every fucking thing I said, it would be boring. I don't need an echo chamber. I need people who will enlighten me, and if I'm wrong, let me know and let me know why.
I don't know if I do get an echo chamber going between here and the Grand Canyon, and we can do a weird game of telephone and then have something recording at the Grand Canyon. You know, I would actually like to see what happens if I'm like, hey, roast beef sandwich, and then to see what it turns into going out to the Grand Canyon, and then whatever it turns into echoing through the Grand
back
Canyon.
as your ex-wife. Your ex-wife.
There is something I really want to say, and like I rarely get to say this like in a serious manner, but like, and bear with me because it's not super long, but it's a little bit long. It's one of the greatest monologues in all of. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Mariah, we're going to get to your comments here in a second. You got some good ones. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is the greatest monologue in perhaps the history of film, and I never get a chance to just do it. So here we go, okay? We are dicks. We're reckless, arrogant, stupid dicks. And the Film Actors Guild are pussies. And Kim Jong-il is an asshole. Pussies don't like dicks because pussies get fucked by dicks. But dicks also fuck assholes. Assholes who just want to shit on everything, okay? Pussies may think they can deal with assholes their way, but the only thing that can fuck an asshole is a dick with some balls. The problem with dicks is that sometimes they fuck too much or they fuck when it isn't appropriate. It takes a pussy to show them that, okay? But sometimes pussies get so full of shit they become assholes themselves. Because pussies are only an inch and a half away from assholes. And I don't know much in this crazy, crazy world, but I do know that if you don't let us fuck this asshole, we're going to have to get our dicks and pussies all covered in shit.
You just became Odd Mother's favorite person of all time right now. You know that, right? By that monologue.
It's one of my favorite. Team America World Police is one of my favorite movies.
We had two things happen here today. I became Odd Mother's most hated to this day, and you became her most favorite.
No. Well, actually, I was going to say, when you were talking about agreement and disagreement, I mean, honestly, you can have no growth with constant agreement.
Oh,
Like, how many times have we had varying opinions on something? And we've sat down and we've talked about it. And eventually we come to a conclusion that everybody's happy with.
The crazy part is everybody assumes that he and I automatically agree on everything. And you have seen where it's the three of us and the two of you are saying something and I go, I don't.
That's what I call the couples disorder, where everyone in your life and everyone around you assumes that when you're a couple, you're one person. You're not.
Yeah.
You're two separate people that have different beliefs, but it's easier for people in their head to just categorize you as, oh, this is one person. And that's like a modern culture sort of thing, like where they match their names together because their relationship suddenly means Brangelina or whatever that crap was. But I mean, that's basically what that.
Her most recent one was
contact me when you can feel your feelings.
Are you seriously bringing that up right now?
And that, my friends, is why contact paper was invented. It's not to line your drawers and cupboards. It's to contact people about your feelings.
Put glue and smash him in his face on it. Here's your contact in your face.
Let me just cover up this bullshit. Okay, we're good.
When you're allowed
Contact
to feel
made.
your own feelings.
When he said that, I was like, is this my side hoe or something like that? What the fuck, man? I was like, I feel my feelings right now. I just told you to fuck off.
This is when you write this like terribly. You write this terribly insulting permission slip, right? Just have her sign it and just like, here, before we begin this conversation, I just want you to have that. All right, now we can get real. Fuck you. Bye-bye.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, let's get to Mariah's comments real fast, and we got to get on with this because we got to finish this one tonight.
Okay, so Mariah was saying churches are paying him close to, or were
Mike
paying
Warnke
him
is what we're talking about. Yeah,
close to $6,000 per night.
Yes.
My grandmother was a church secretary for a huge church in our area. They contracted him for a whole weekend and ended up paying like $18,000 for a 3-night set.
This guy would do. He would just do basically like an hour's worth of work, and it wasn't really work. It was just him going out there spitting out absolute
And the churches would be packed.
You mean I could be getting paid $6,000 for this shit for just making shit? I do that all the time for free.
Flying spaghetti monster.
All we got to do is make the spaghetti monster a scapegoat and tell these people, and we're gonna make money.
Yeah, that's why we have the middle finger emojis.
Yep.
Mariah, shit. Raz and I fight like once a month.
I don't think we fought. We don't fight. Honestly, we do have this. We have. Yeah, I don't.
Well, no, I mean, like Frank and I, even in a relationship, we learned very early on that
get out of my kitchen.
Get the fuck out of my kitchen when I'm cooking.
One of us is that way. We both own the kitchen, but when we're one of us, that is our type A personality. We both are cooks, and I know what I'm doing. She knows what she's doing. If she's
grabbing my ingredients and throwing them in there when I'd already done it.
Stop. Is this really about cooking, or is this a euphemism? Because I'm feeling that. Okay, I'm just double checking.
No. Everything else, we don't fight about that stuff. That happens.
Aside from that,
and we're not going to go deep into that one.
I forgot where I was going with that. No, we don't fight. We discuss, and that was something that we learned pretty early on. Both of us coming out of really abusive relationships, where we were both fighting, yelling, screaming, throwing things. I mean,
I don't.
Granted, all I did was throw a bit of butter, and it hit the person in the face, and then they threw a temper tantrum and said I was abusing them.
I don't raise my voice.
There's a comeback for that. Like if that would if I would hit someone with butter, they'd gotten pissed off. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm more pissed off this situation. You know why? Because I can't even believe that's not butter. And then I called defusing the bomb.
Like I lobbed it, thinking it was going to be funny.
She told me
and
this
I didn't
story.
mean to hit him in the face, and it totally just like
She told me the story to
we
test the
could make
waters.
millions off this instead of cheese. We could start.
She was trying to butter him up, but it backfired.
I literally got screamed at and told that I was abusing him, and I was like, "All right, pussy."
So
it was butter.
We got together, and I think we're on our first trip heading to the central coast of California to see her grandmother at the time, who was in the hospital. And she was telling me the story, and it was to test the waters. She's like, "How would you react to that if that happened to you?" I was like, if I can clearly see that you were completely joking around and it was an accident, I would have just laughed it off. But I mean, if you viciously just chucked a whole stick of butter at my head, I'm like, what the fuck? But
so it was the whole churn.
Really, like a little, just having fun. Like, I'm sorry this got in my eye. I'm gonna go wash it out and laugh at it.
We had fought earlier that day, and I thought it was over, and I decided to cook dinner for everybody. Or everybody being me and the person. And it was like not even a tablespoon of butter. And he said something, and I was laughing, and I lobbed it. And it like...
I would have been like, dude, especially at the distance that she did it at, I was like, fucking A, man.
That would have been
Great
funny to
aim.
me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I started laughing, and he started screaming about how I was fucking abusive. And I was like,
fucking pussy.
I was like, how am I fucking abusive? Sorry it happened, but come on, it's butter.
If you could have gotten a black eye out of that, I think everybody would have applauded you. You got a black eye by throwing butter in some dude's
If I would have got
eyes.
a black eye out of that, I probably would have been throwing something else.
No, not you. I'm sorry. Here we go.
That would have been butter in a sock.
Butter in a sock. I'm just imagining you just hitting someone with the whole churn. Like, you just pick up the churn like Amish he woman and just start going at it.
Just you give me about 5 hours, I'll have this churn into some butter.
But I'm imagining her like in the whole like I'm imagining her in the whole Amish like outfit and everything, just with the butter like. The bonnet really makes the whole situation.
In the face. Why are you hitting me with the butter in the face? I hit you with the butter in the face.
And then comes Fabio on the horse.
Hey, Fabio got hit in the face with a goose going on Montezuma's.
He broke his face over it too, I think.
I remember that. It was a roller coaster or something, wasn't it?
Wait, did you say Montezuma's Revenge?
Yep.
That's also diarrhea.
I know.
He got hit in the face with a goose with diarrhea. Cha cha cha. Okay, sorry, we scrolled too much.
And that goose came straight from Satan.
There's our loop back. Paradise.
I listened to that 8 times this week because it's in the new Weird Al movie, which is the best comedy I've ever seen.
We're gonna watch it as soon as we're done here. Yeah. We're gonna watch it.
Slacker.
So, in 1986, a new district attorney, Ira Rayner, called the evidence incredibly weak and dropped all the charges against Virginia McMartin, Peggy Ann Buckley, Mary Ann Jackson, Betty Rader, and Babette Spittler.
This was the 5 that got released.
Peggy McMartin Buckley and Ray Buckley remained in custody awaiting trial. Peggy McMartin's bail had been set at $1 million, and Ray Buckley had been denied bail.
Which she was required to pay $1 million. I think she had to pay 100,000 of it, and that's a lot of money for the time.
The first trial opened on July 13th, 1987. During the trial, the prosecution presented 7 medical witnesses. The defense attempted to rebut them with several witnesses, but the judge limited them to 1 in order to save time. In their summation, the prosecution argued that they had 7 experts on this issue when the defense only had 1. In 1989, Peggy Ann Buckley's appeal to have her teaching credentials reinstated after their suspension was granted. The judge ruled that there was no credible evidence or corroboration to lead to the license being suspended, and that a review of the videotape interviews with the McMartin children revealed a pronounced absence of any evidence implicating Peggy Ann in any wrongdoing, and raises additional doubts of credibility with respect to the children interviewed or with respect to the value of the CII interviewing techniques themselves. The following day, the state credentialing board in Sacramento endorsed the ruling and restored Buckley's right to teach.
So this is a separate judge coming in here going, this is all bullshit. You can go back to work.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
And this is the same thing that actually happens with a lot of trial, like the OJ trial. OJ was acquitted, but in the civil trial, he was guilty as hell and
Mhm.
had to pay out millions, which is the reason why he moved to Florida, because Florida doesn't make you pay out. It doesn't make you pay out if you're from another state. If whatever happened in another state. So
in October
Gotcha.
of 1987, jailhouse informant George Freeman, not to be confused with George Foreman,
But he
love
did get
his grill,
he did
though.
get grilled. Yeah.
Yeah, he did
he
get
got
grilled.
grilled, was called as a witness and testified that Ray Bucky had confessed to him while sharing a cell.
This is insane. Here,
Freeman later attempted to flee the country and confessed to perjury in a series of other criminal cases in which he manufactured testimony in exchange for favorable treatment by the prosecution, in several instances fabricating jailhouse confessions of other inmates. In order to guarantee his testimony during the McMartin case, Freeman was given immunity to previous charges of perjury.
so what? Yeah, that and there's a couple things I'm going to say here. So he was given immunity. The prosecution in this case, the prosecutioners, that could be a badass metal name. The prosecution
So they like the
paid
Lone
his
Rangers?
the Lone Rangers. The prosecution paid his first month's rent, everything like that when he got when he got out of jail. But the defense tore this guy up. They went through every single instance of his perjury and his perjury charges, and it just lost everything for the prosecution.
Mhm.
There was no way. It was every single trial this guy was involved in lied. Every single trial. It's insane. And the prosecution was willing. The prosecution knew this and was willing to use him regardless.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So on January 18th, 1990, after 3 years of testimony and 9 weeks of deliberation by the jury, Peggy McMartin Bucky was acquitted on all charges. Ray Bucky was cleared on 52 of 65 charges.
This is insane.
And freed on bail after more than 5 years in jail. 9 of the 11 jurors at the press conference following the trial stated that they believed that the children had been molested, but the evidence did not allow them to state who had committed the abuse beyond a reasonable doubt. 11 out of the 13 jurors who remained by the end of the trial voted to acquit Bucky of the charges. The refusal of the remaining 2 to vote for a not guilty verdict resulted in a deadlock. The media overwhelmingly focused on the 2 jurors who voted guilty at the expense of those who believed Bucky was not guilty.
11 out of 13. Basically, it was 11 out of the 12.
With the 1 extra.
The alternate is what it is, just in case they needed someone to substitute. The 11 out of 12 believed that this guy did not do any of this stuff. There was basically 2 people that were like, no, we believe some stuff happened here, but we have no proof of that, so we're just going to deadlock this. And because of that, and this actually happened in both trials, the prosecution just finally decided to dismiss charges because of what they did. Instead of giving him an outright innocent or an acquittal, he to this day has people believing that he molested these kids. And it's, even though Ray Bucky right now, I think he became a lawyer. I do believe he did become a lawyer, went to law school and everything, became a lawyer. He is still going to be haunted by this. Huh?
We haven't even got to the second trial yet.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. but it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Completely.
So Ray Bucky was retried later on 6 of the 13 counts, which he was not acquitted on. Acquitted in the first trial of. The second trial opened on May 7th, 1990, and resulted in another hung jury. On July 27th, 1990, the prosecution then gave up trying to obtain a conviction, and the case was closed with all charges against Ray Bucky dismissed. He had been jailed for 5 years without ever being convicted of committing any crime. In 1988, the New York Times reported that the case attracted national attention when the authorities speculated that hundreds of children might have been molested and subjected to satanic rituals, and has teetered on the brink of mistrial. The media coverage was generally skewed towards the uncritical acceptance of the prosecution's point of view. David Shaw of the Los Angeles Times wrote a series of articles which later won the Pulitzer Prize, discussing the flawed and skewed coverage presented by his own paper on the trial. It was only after the case that coverage of the flaws in the evidence and events presented by witnesses and the prosecution were discussed. Wayne Satz, at the time a reporter for the Los Angeles ABC affiliate station KABC, reported on the case and the children's allegations. He presented an unchallenged view of the children's and parents' claims. Satz later entered into a romantic relationship with Key McFarland, the social worker at the Children's Institute International.
They suspect that she was actually leaking information to him.
Who was interviewing the children.
Yeah.
Another instance of media conflict of interest occurred when David Rosenweig, the editor of the Los Angeles Times overseeing the coverage, became engaged to Lau Rubin, the prosecutor.
Yep. There was money to be made here, and money is the religion of it's Scott Davis.
And
Salem Witch
careers
Trials
to be
2.0.
made.
Exactly.
Mhm. The case lasted 7 years, cost $15 million, the longest and most expensive criminal trial in the history of the United States legal system, and ultimately resulted in no convictions.
Could you imagine the OJ trial, as much as we saw it? I think we all remember it, especially I know I remember it because I watched the crap out of it as a kid and junior high and stuff like that.
It was interesting,
It was neat. It was neat to watch how things worked, how the system worked and how they collected evidence, how evidence can be tainted, stuff like that. It was neat to watch, but even that didn't come close to the cost of this.
The McMartin preschool was closed and the building was dismantled. In 2005, one of the children, as an adult, retracted the allegations of abuse. Never did anyone do anything to me. I never saw them doing anything. I said a lot of things that didn't happen. I lied. Anytime I would give them an answer that they didn't like, they would ask again and encourage me to give them the answer they were looking for. I felt uncomfortable and a little ashamed that I was being dishonest, but at the same time, being the type of person I was, whatever my parents wanted me to do, I would do.
Well, he was a little kid. There was nothing that he could do about it. Like you're obligated as a kid. You're going to go along with what your parents or what the authority figures say. And if people are saying, no, you need to tell the truth, and we back you because you're a child, they're going to do the right thing. But if you have them going, no, we need you to tell our truths, they're going to go along with that too, because kids are impressionable. They don't understand what's going on.
Kids are still people pleasers. That's just what they
want to be accepted.
They want the validation from their parents. They want, the validations from the adults, from the authority figures, all of that.
When we get into West Memphis 3, we're going to actually, even at there's a lot of adults that still will go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
They see the person in the uniform, and especially if they're not, they don't have the highest IQs, stuff like that. They're going to go along with it, whatever gets them out of the interrogation room.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Devil in the Nursery, Margaret Talbot for the New York Times summarized the case. When you once believed something that now strikes you as absurd, even unhinged, it can be almost impossible to summon that feeling of credulity again. Maybe that is why it is easier for most of us to forget rather than to try to explain. The satanic abuse scare that gripped this country in the early 80s. The myth that devil worshippers had set up shop in our daycare centers where their clever adepts were raping and sodomizing children, practicing ritual sacrifice, shedding their clothes, drinking blood, and eating feces, all unnoticed by parents, neighbors, and authorities.
I blame video games.
Let's not even go there.
I'm kidding.
I'm sorry. I
Mary-
feel like if I saw a kid walk down the street eating shit, I would definitely be like, "Hey, that's
Too
not
many
good
video
for you."
games.
Yeah.
So how long have you guys been eating poop?
It's like that old
literally
Green Jelly
never.
song, "The Misadventures of Shit Man."
If I saw a kid eating shit on the street, it'd be like, not my problem. I'm gonna go over here and get a beer.
Ice cream, get your ice cream.
Ice cream, soft served ice cream. Anybody want soft served ice cream?
Mary A. Fisher, in an article in Los Angeles Magazine, said that the case was simply invented and transmogrified into a national cause celebre
Look,
by the misplaced zeal of 6 people: Judy Johnson, a seriously mental ill mother who died of alcoholism; Jane Hogue, the detective who investigated the complaints; Key McFarland, the social worker who interviewed the children; Robert Philibosian.
Okay.
That we have a very large Armenian population in Los Angeles.
I got
there's
And
an
so-
Armenian genocide memorial there. It's
Yeah.
actually super cool. I mean,
And-
it's not cool that it happened, but it's again, there we go. I was foot and mouth today.
But every time I see the SIAN
Wow.
at the end of a name, that's what I think of. And so, and with it being Los Angeles, I'm assuming Philibosian.
They're
And I could be wrong, but
It sounds right to me.
It's like that's like the last name of the almost like the last name of the kid in it's called Big Mouth. If you guys have seen that card.
yeah.
I love that show. I
I can't
absolutely
remember his
love it.
last name now, but like it reminds me of that.
Oh, Nick Kroll.
Obviously,
no.
that's not who he's saying.
The character that's the one that has like sex with everything, including his pillow.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh.
Last name.
The pansexual the kid. Yeah, I know you're talking.
Yeah,
about.
like,
He's
but his
awesome.
last name kind of reminds me of that, like the.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
pit bull is super intelligent, but he's also
Yeah.
mean. It's funny as hell.
The district attorney Robert Philibosian, the district attorney who was in a losing battle for re-election; Wayne Satz, the television reporter who first reported the case; Lael Rubin, the prosecutor. In 1990, Peggy Ray and Peggy Ann Bucky spoke to the National Association of State Voice Organizations about their experiences. Peggy Ann and Ray Bucky attended the 1997 Day of Contrition conference in Salem, Massachusetts. They were joined by other victims and experts of the daycare sex abuse hysteria.
Can we go back here real fast? Go back up.
For what?
Well, I think this technically counts as if anybody plays Modern Warfare. This counts as a kill streak here, meaning you got so many things right in a row, you get to use a certain word. Transmogrified.
There you go.
Okay, I'm not going that far.
I'm just saying that if someone was able to use the word transmogrified
Transmogrification.
or transmogrification, which they have been trying
Fiduciary.
They've been trying for years to figure out where to put that in an article, and then this happens, and they're like, I can finally use this word, and their life is completely set.
Forever.
Right?
It was like me in that monologue earlier. There was just that magic moment where everything.
I got to get my charger cord. Hold on.
So, in many states, laws were passed allowing children to testify on closed circuit TV so the children would not be traumatized by facing the accused. Oh, that would have been great. The argument was supported in Maryland versus Craig. See, this is why you should stop kicking my thing.
That was my knee. I wasn't kicking. I was swinging back and forth and hit my knee on your chair arms. I'm not used to your new chair.
You did it with my old chair.
You did it.
Whoa! Okay.
So again, let's try this again. In many states, laws were passed allowing children to testify on closed-circuit TV so the children would not be traumatized by facing the accused. The arrangement was supported by Maryland v. Craig, which is Maryland versus Craig, in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that closed-circuit testimony was permissible where it was limited to circumstances with a likelihood that a minor may be harmed by testifying in open court. The case also influenced how very young children were questioned for evidence in court cases with concerns over their capacity for suggestibility and false memories. The case and others like it also affected the investigation of allegations by young children. Normal police procedure is to record using video, tape, or notes in interview with alleged victims. The initial interviews with children by the CCI were recorded and demonstrated to the jury members in the trial the coercive and suggestive techniques used by the CCI staff to produce allegations. These interviews were instrumental in the jury members failing to produce a guilty verdict against Bucky, and several similar trials with similar interviewing techniques produced similar not guilty verdicts when juries were allowed to view the records. In response, the prosecutors and investigators began abandoning their tape recorders and notepads, and the manual was produced for investigating child abuse cases that urged prosecutors and investigators not to record their interviews. That seems skeezy.
Back when they started doing it all in stick figure drawings instead, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. I can tell you from stuff that happened to me, remembering being there with the detectives, they were actually they were more progressive for the time, and they did not lead. They didn't lead me on or anything like that. They wanted to know what was really going on, and they sat there and wanted to know. It was organic. That's what I'm trying to say. And it I'm not trying to go into too much detail, but I just remember, like, it for the detectives on my side, it was more they were very understanding and very comforting, especially for me being a child at the time. I was like second grade, and I know it's hard for people to understand if you believe or if you remember that far back, but I do, and it was different. Because I want to say because they went through a lot of this stuff and they were like, okay, no, we need to make sure this is actually going on here, or is this made up? You know? Right. Because second grade for me was like 1989 or something like that, 87. Yeah, 89, I think it was. So this was at the tail end of everything that was going on with the Satanic Panic here in Kern County and in the McMartin trial. So. But it was it's very intimidating to be in there, even as a kid, because you're there with people you don't know in any way, shape, or form. Sure. When stuff like this happens as a kid, you are your parents give consent. Because on my side it was neighbors and stuff like that. So my parents gave consent, and I'm pulled away from them, you know. And it's talking, and it did go on. Even there was no coercion or anything like that, but it did go on for about an hour or two. But like I said, they came across as caring people and stuff like that. So it was fine for me to open up and talk about it. You know. Sorry.
No, I mean that's a good perspective, because a lot of people they don't know.
Exactly.
What a child may go through with things like that.
Exactly.
All right. So we're almost done, guys.
We are almost done.
So in 1990, parents who believed their children had been abused at the preschool hired what?
Where are you at? I'm sorry.
No. I can read it. It's just kind of
dumb. They fucked up the notes on this one.
Okay. No, they didn't fuck it up. I just think it's ridiculous, okay?
Oh, I see.
In 1990, parents who believed their children had in fact been abused at the preschool hired archaeologists E. Gary Stickle.
There actually was not just the parents
To
did this, the state did this, and I
investigate the site.
see why they did it when I was actually listening to some other documentaries. It was to prove beyond a shadow of doubt that there was nothing going on the grounds of this. Everything they found out from their archaeological digs, going from
We're gonna get there.
I'm sorry, going from they went through the process. Every blanket, every fabric, everything that was there at this school, they pulled it, tested it. None of their DNA was on it, and they found nothing there.
I think I saw what you're talking about, and it was just basically to put all these rumors to rest. Because these people still did not get a life after all this.
No, they didn't.
I mean, when you walk into a courtroom with a fedora and a whip, they're going to take you seriously as an archaeologist.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Please stop. Please stop.
Sorry. I love you.
I love you too.
You're my best
Stop.
friend.
He knows he's going to get murdered to sleep tonight, so he's just like, you know what, fuck it. Let's see how far we can go.
Murder in my sleep. I'm not going to sleep. I'm staying up playing God of War Ragnarok.
That's good.
So in 1990, parents who believed their children had been abused at the preschool hired archaeologist E. Gary Stickle to investigate the site. In May 1990, Stickle claimed he found evidence of tunnels consistent with the children's accounts under the McMartin preschool
Are you
using
fucking serious?
ground-penetrating radar. Others have disagreed with Stickle's conclusion. John Earl wrote in 1995 that the concrete slab floor was undisturbed except for a small patch where the sewer line was tapped into. Once the slab was removed, there was no sign of any materials to line or hold up any tunnels. The concrete floor would have made it impossible for the defendants to fill any tunnels once the abuse investigation began. The articles concluded that disturbed soil under the slab was from the sewer line and construction fill buried underneath the slab before it was poured. Further, Earl noted that some fill from beneath the concrete slab was dated to the year 1940. W. Joseph Wyatt's 2002 report concluded that the so-called tunnels under the preschool were more plausibly explained as a series of adjacent rubbish pits used by the owners of the site before the preschool's construction in 1966. Materials found during the excavation included bottles predominantly dating back to the 1930s and 40s, as well as tin can fragments, plywood, inner tubes, professionally butchered livestock bones, 4 small containers of trash, and a former owner's old mailbox. Only 3 small items found near the edge of the concrete slab were dated after 1966. Wyatt suggested one of these, a fragment of a plastic snack bag, was most likely dragged into the pit by rats or other scavengers, just as Stickle himself had suggested likely happened for other debris that didn't fit his tunnel theory. The remaining items, per Wyatt, had likely been left by a plumber digging from adjacent to the building to avoid damaging the concrete pad. Moreover, Wyatt speculated that Stickle's conclusions were colored by his collaboration with the parents of the McMartin children.
In the mushroom the guy ate before he jumped through the wall and said, "It's me, Mario."
It's me, Mario.
Yeah.
It's me, Chris Pratt as Mario.
So shortly after investigation in the McMartin charges began, the funds to research child sexual abuse greatly increased, notably through the budget allocated for the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect. The agency's budget increased from $1.8 million to $7.2 million between 1983 and 1984, increasing to $15 million in 1985, making it the greatest source of funding for child abuse and neglect prevention in the United States. The majority of this budget went towards studies on sexual abuse, with only $5 million going towards the physical abuse and neglect. Federal funding was also used to arrange conferences on ritual abuse, providing an aura of respectability, as well as allowing prosecutors to exchange tips on the best means of obtaining convictions. That sounds skeezy.
That
Very
sounds kind of
skeezy.
ominous.
Everything you just read right there is skeezy as fuck.
Yeah. A portion of the funds were used to publish the book Behind the Playground Walls, which used a sample of children drawn from the McMartin families. The book claimed to study the effects of reported rather than actual abuse but portrayed all of the McMartin children as actual victims of abuse, despite a lack of convictions during the trials and without mentioning questions about the reality of the accusations. Another grant of $173,000 went to David Finkelhor.
What is up with these names?
Did you say Finkel whore? Because that's what it sounded like you just saed.
That's exactly what I said.
Finkelhor is
Okay. I feel a little bit better.
is the bastard son of Finkel.
Einhorn. Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel.
Finkel is the man. Einhorn is
Laces out.
The king rolled around the world.
You know, we were watching that tonight. While sitting there going,
me
I
too now.
swear to God, I didn't call Oddmother old. I did not call her old. I'm going to watch Ace
But
Ventura.
earlier you admitted it. You literally admitted in third person that you did. And I'm going to pull that
That
clip
wasn't me
later.
admitting it. That wasn't someone in third person. What are you talking about?
That's
Laces
because Texas is a
out.
Finkel Hewer.
Look, there was a Finkel Hooer in the sewers underneath the McMartin school where their satanic pedophile ring was centered, who called Oddmother old. It was not me. I was just pretending to be one of them.
Okay.
He was deep undercover.
Last sentence.
Deeper.
So another grant of $173,000 went to
600
None other than-
minutes.
David Finkelhor,
Fucking
who
Finkel.
used the
Do it.
funds to investigate allegations of daycare sexual abuse throughout the country, combining the study of verified crimes by admitted pedophiles and unverified accusations of satanic ritual abuse.
So,
And
Not
that's
to-
where we end.
Not to
That's
be
where we
confused with David Sparklehooker.
so the one thing that we didn't get to in the
God damn it.
notes here, the McMartins, Ray Bucky and Peggy Bucky McMartin, or his mom and his sister Peggy.
Damn it, Peggy.
Peggy who? Huh. They tried suing McFarland. They tried suing all these people. They got one person who was one of the family members. They actually did sue them for defamation, and they won. Everyone else they lost. Do you know how much money they got from that one person that they sued for defamation?
$350.
As long as it wasn't defecation.
They got $1. No joke.
I
Their
remember
entire
that.
lives
Yep.
were ruined because all these people wanted to make their careers. All their lives were ruined. These kids' lives were ruined. Everything was ruined, and they got $1. The prosecution didn't get in trouble for lying about for not bringing the evidence forward with Judy being a schizophrenic. No one got in trouble for all the lies. No one did, but their lives were ruined. I think his mother died in early 2000, or she was like 76 or something like that. Still believing she still lived in her own home prior to it and after, the home that she grew up in, or had prior to the trial and afterwards. Had to deal with when the verdicts came in that it was deadlocked both times. Thousands of people took to the streets protesting, wanting these people hung. Basically, these people's lives. It was a modern witch trial. They were just destroyed. Ray Bucky became, he went to law school. I want to say, I'm hoping he's a lawyer now. I'm hoping he's doing well, but there's not much else after this. They're all private citizens now, with the ones that are still alive. So
Mm-hmm.
that was that. That was the McMartin school preschool scandal.
Yep. Yep.
Insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah,
I mean,
insane.
to go from the 1970s pedophile ring of with Gacy and Dean Coral to this.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I will let you know he is a lawyer. He got
good.
his degree. He practices family law.
Okay.
He does have a law office based out of I believe it's Sacramento.
Sacramento is what it said.
And apparently he's doing pretty well. So that's awesome. He has more than 60 years of collective experience within his law firm. And yeah, he owns his own law offices. So congratulations to you.
That's good.
That's cool. I'm happy that came out for you, man.
You see the pictures of his grandmother, his mom. These are honestly, you can actually look at the pictures and say these were nice people that were just screwed over.
Oh yeah,
it's terrible.
All because everybody was like, "Oh my God, people are trying to sacrifice my baby to the devil."
And I want to say, I set up this whole light thing for a whole shtick, and it's the end of the show, so I got to do it. So I'm this color for a reason, and I say this part, like I even hit this part of the whole shtick from Hexus over there. So I get really depressed, like sometimes we talk about these serious subjects, and I'm blue. I get really blue because I'm blue. I just really wanted to have a one time in my life where I could sing just a moment of that song and it'd be relevant. So that was 2 hours and 23 minutes I wasted and $8.43 to do a shtick.
It wasn't wasted. It was in the back of your head and you held it there, and that means you did right. If you forgot.
And I was holding this one back. I was like this pressure on myself. Like, you gotta wait, man. You gotta wait.
He was that kid in the
Isn't
theater.
it bad that I still know all the lyrics to that song for real?
Oh
yeah, it's darkness.
No,
No, I live in the dark. Sorry, cats.
We're coming in here at the beginning, and I hear.
Yep.
I hear. There's no cats in the room right now.
I said that because
Okay.
my mom likes to do in the middle of our recordings, whatever we're doing. It doesn't matter if we're doing Risk Bleed Red or whatnot. When I'm producing like the horror gallery or whoever else's show, like the Owlite podcast, I can actually just mute myself because I'm on there with you. But when I'm in the backgrounds, whatever, it doesn't matter. But when it's on this recording, we're like, I'm in the middle of a Satanist sentence, and all of a sudden I hear,
I'm in the middle of a Satanist sentence.
I'm in the middle of a Satanist sentence. And I hear, Meffy, where's your Meffy? Come get your food. Like,
where are you?
Oh, right there. That's good. We're gonna have a rave now.
I can't block the mic. I am in the middle. Yeah.
What is love, baby?
Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No.
Put that on normal color now. Sorry, I'm done with that shtick. I mean, that's fine.
Well, this is this.
That's fine.
Raz is done with his shtick, I think.
Yep.
Is there more shticks you want to put out there?
No. I'm totally done with all the shticks, but like, I gotta say, this light's nice. It's a lot better than lighting I had before. So that's pretty cool.
I like the lighting that we have for our LEDs right now in the red, but when we put it into the actual, I like how we look in it, but we have to, the LED right now is directly in my eyes. And LED gives me terrible headaches when it's the bright lights, but it makes us look good. But I was like, I can't do it. So we just always go for purples or reds.
I've got the normal color of this ring light. It's a little bit bright, but it's a softer, like the LEDs, it's the covering of the ring. But it's actually
well, maybe we should discuss this backstage.
Oh, boss lady just spoke.
I'm just saying.
We're in trouble. We're all getting written up.
But I bought it from Satan, so it's cool.
Finkelstein.
So,
in 2 weeks, we're going to be actually going into the West Memphis 3, and I'm going to pass it off to Oddmother.
Oh, me?
Is it? We could find her. We could all find notes together on this and talk about it. And
yeah. Okay.
But I think we can get it done in one show. If not, will there be It'll be a part 2 of a
I
part
was
2 of
really
a
holding
part
myself
2.
on back. I was holding myself back hardcore on this one, guys. Like, there's a lot of missed opportunities. I'm just like, nope. We're gonna get through one thing for a change. Just one thing.
2 hours and 25 minutes is what we're at right now.
Yep.
I think with that one we can go all out, and then after that, there is a certain serial killer we'll end the season with. And it's one of my go-to serial killers that I love to read about. And talk
Go
about.
figure.
Head
Yep.
size holes.
Yep.
And we're gonna go deep.
Way to
Erumation!
go deep into these head size holes.
Yes.
Yep. So
All the
if
way.
Kyle wants to go ahead and hit the end button here, so we can
And
all get out of here.
And don't forget to suck it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Illegal whore.
Figure.